The rain hit New Orleans like it wanted to drown the city. Clara Monroe stood before the cracked bathroom mirror of her studio apartment, one hand gripping the porcelain sink, the other holding a makeup sponge she'd used so many times the foam had gone gray. The bruise beneath her left eye had faded to a sickly yellow-green, 3 months old now, but still visible under certain lights. She pressed the sponge against her cheekbone, watching the concealer blend into skin that had learned to hide too many things. Outside, water hammered the single window facing Dauphine Street. The glass rattled in its frame. Everything in this building was loose, temporary, barely holding together, just like her. Her phone buzzed on the toilet tank. A text from Mira appeared on the cracked screen. Asterisk interview tonight at 8. Obsidian Lounge. Dress nice. This could change everything. See asterisk. Clara set down the sponge and studied her reflection. 26 years old. Blonde hair she'd recently cut short, easier to manage, harder for someone to grab. Blue eyes that used to be bright but now carried a perpetual wariness, like a deer that had survived hunting season but knew winter was coming. She thought about Damien, couldn't help it. The mind does that, circles back to trauma like a tongue to a broken tooth. 3 months since the night she'd waited until he passed out drunk, then stuffed 2 garbage bags with clothes and walked out of his house in Metairie at 2 a.m. 3 months of sleeping with pepper spray on the nightstand and a chair wedged under the doorknob. 3 months of jumping every time a car door slammed or footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Mira had found her that first week, shivering in a bus station bathroom, and taken her in. Mira, who worked nights at some upscale bar in the French Quarter, who wore designer shoes and never talked about where she got her money. Mira, who asked no questions and expected none in return. The job interview was Mira's doing. "They're looking for someone with experience," she'd said over coffee that morning. "You used to bartend in college, right? I don't mention where you've been the last year." Fresh start. Fresh start. The words tasted like a lie Clara wanted desperately to believe. She opened her closet, if you could call a tension rod with 6 hangers a closet. The black dress hung at the end, the only nice thing she'd taken from Damien's house. He'd bought it for her to wear to his company dinners, back when he still pretended to be the man she'd fallen in love with. Before the control turned to suspicion, the suspicion to rage, the rage to fists, Clara pulled the dress on. It fit differently now she'd lost weight, and the fabric hung loose around her ribs. She smoothed it down, slipped on the only pair of heels that didn't have scuff marks, and grabbed her purse. The rain hadn't let up. By the time she reached the street, her shoes were soaked and her carefully applied makeup was running. She didn't have money for a taxi. The bus would take 40 minutes. She walked to the stop, rainwater streaming down her neck, and told herself that tonight would be different. That this job would be the first real step toward something that belonged only to her. She didn't know that the Obsidian Lounge wasn't just a bar, and she didn't know that the man who owned it ruled more than liquor and lights. The Obsidian Lounge occupied the ground floor of a renovated warehouse on the edge of the French Quarter, where the tourist traps gave way to something older and less forgiving. Clara stood across the street, water dripping from her hair, staring at the building. It was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. The exterior was matte black stone obsidian, she assumed, with gold accents that caught the streetlights. A line of well-dressed people snaked around the corner, waiting behind velvet ropes while 2 massive security guards checked IDs and turned away anyone who didn't meet some invisible standard. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here. But she'd promised Mira she'd try, and she had $17 in her checking account. So Clara crossed the street, clutching her purse, and approached the entrance. One of the guards stepped forward. He was built like a refrigerator, with a shaved head and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. "Back of the line," he said without looking at her. "I have an interview," Clara managed. "At 8. With." She realized she didn't know who she was meeting. Mira had arranged everything. The guard's expression didn't change. Name: Clara Monroe. He pulled out a tablet, scrolled through something, then nodded. "Go to the side entrance. Someone will meet you." He gestured to a black door beside the main entrance, nearly invisible against the dark stone. Clara walked toward it, hyper-aware of the people in line watching her, wondering who she was to get special access. The side door opened before she could knock. A woman stood in the threshold, tall, elegant, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent, and regarded her with the kind of assessment usually reserved for livestock at auction. "Miss Monroe?" The woman's voice was crisp, professional. I'm Talia Ross, floor manager. Follow me. The door closed behind Clara with a heavy click that sounded too much like a lock. Inside was nothing like she'd expected. The corridor was narrow and dimly lit, walls painted deep burgundy, the floor polished concrete. They passed several doors, all closed, before Talia led her up a spiral staircase to the second floor. Music pulsed through the walls now, bass notes she could feel in her chest. They emerged into a hallway overlooking the main floor of the lounge, and Clara caught her first glimpse of the space below. It was stunning. Crystal chandeliers hung from exposed brick ceilings. The bar itself was a curve of black marble that seemed to glow from within. Leather booths lined the walls, each separated by frosted glass panels that provided privacy without isolation. The clientele moved like dancers in expensive clothes, their laughter mixing with jazz that drifted from invisible speakers. This way, Talia said. They walked to the end of the hallway, where a door made of dark wood stood closed. Talia knocked twice, a pattern Clara noticed. 2 quick raps, a pause, then one more. Come in, a voice said from inside. Talia opened the door and gestured for Clara to enter. Mr. Varga will see you now. Clara stepped into an office that looked like it belonged in a different century. Bookshelves lined 2 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes. A desk made of what looked like reclaimed ship timber sat near the window, papers arranged in neat stacks. The lighting was warm, almost intimate, a single lamp on the desk, another in the corner casting shadows across Persian rugs. And behind the desk sat a man who made Clara forget how to breathe properly. Lucien Varga was perhaps 40, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples, olive skin, and eyes so dark they looked black in the lamplight. He wore a 3-piece suit without a tie, the top button of his shirt undone, revealing a glimpse of a tattoo on his collarbone. When he looked up at her, his gaze was the kind that saw through polite lies straight to the bone. Miss Monroe, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Sit. It wasn't a request. Clara sat, setting her wet purse on the floor, trying not to shiver in her damp dress. She folded her hands in her lap to hide the trembling. Lucien studied her for a long moment without speaking. The silence stretched like taffy, and Clara felt the urge to fill it with nervous chatter, to explain herself, to apologize for existing in his space. Instead, she met his eyes and waited. Something flickered in his expression, approval maybe, or interest. Mira speaks highly of you, he said finally. His voice was deep, with a trace of an accent she couldn't place. Eastern European, perhaps. She says you need work, that you're reliable. I am, Clara said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Why here? Because I need a fresh start. Everyone needs a fresh start, Miss Monroe. That's not a reason. That's a circumstance. He leaned forward slightly. Why here? Why this place? Clara hesitated. She could lie, say she'd heard good things, that she admired the establishment, that she had a passion for mixology. But something about the way he watched her suggested lies wouldn't work. Because Mira said you pay well and don't ask questions, she said quietly. And I need both of those things right now. Lucien's lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. Honest. I like that. He picked up a folder from his desk and opened it. You bartended at Tulane for 2 years while studying English literature. Graduated with honors. Then nothing for the last 18 months. No employment record. No tax returns. You've been invisible. Clara's chest tightened. How did you? I make it my business to know who enters my establishment, he said calmly. The gap doesn't concern me. What concerns me is whether you can handle the work. This isn't a college bar, Miss Monroe. My clients are particular. They expect discretion, excellence, and absolute professionalism. Can you provide that? She wanted to ask how he'd gotten her information. Wanted to stand up and walk out, because this felt too much like Damien's surveillance, his need to control every aspect of her life. But she also needed this job desperately. Yes, she said. I can. Lucien closed the folder. The pay is $1,500 a week, cash. You work Thursday through Sunday, 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. You report to Talia, follow the house rules without exception, and you don't speak to anyone about what you see or hear in this building. Are we clear? $1,500 a week. Clara's mind spun. That was more than she'd made in a month at Tulane. We're clear, she said. Good. He stood, buttoning his jacket. Talia will give you the paperwork and schedule your training. One more thing, Miss Monroe. He walked around the desk, stopping a few feet from her chair. Up close, he was even more imposing. Not tall exactly, but solid, with the kind of presence that made rooms feel smaller. "I don't hire out of pity," he said quietly. "I hire because I believe you can survive here. Don't make me regret that belief." Clara stood, meeting his eyes. "I won't." For a moment, they just looked at each other, two people sizing up threat levels, calculating risk. Then Lucien nodded once. "Welcome to the Obsidian Lounge, Miss Monroe." As she left his office, following Talia back down the spiral staircase, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't escaped danger at all. She'd just stepped into a different kind. The training room was in the basement, accessed by yet another narrow staircase that made Clara feel like she was descending into the earth. The space was clinical white walls, stainless steel counters, a fully stocked practice bar, and mirrors along one wall that made everything feel exposed. Talia stood at the bar, arranging bottles with the precision of a surgeon. 3 other women sat on stools, all young, all beautiful, all dressed in the same black uniform Clara would soon wear. "Listen carefully," Talia began without preamble. "I only say this once. The Obsidian has 3 rules that are non-negotiable. Break them, and you're gone. No warnings, no second chances." She held up one finger. "Rule 1, you don't ask questions. Not about the clients, not about their business, not about what you overhear. If someone tells you something, you forget it the moment your shift ends. Understood?" The women nodded. Clara added her own nod a beat later. "Rule 2. Talia held up a second finger. "You don't touch the clients. Not casually, not flirtatiously, not even if they touch you first. You maintain professional distance at all times. If a client becomes inappropriate, you notify security immediately. You do not handle it yourself." One of the other women, a redhead with sharp cheekbones, raised her hand. "What about, did I say you could speak?" Talia's voice could have cut glass. The redhead dropped her hand. "Rule 3. Talia's third finger went up. "You don't drink on shift. Not a sip, not a taste test, nothing. I don't care if a client offers you a $1,000 bottle of champagne. You smile, you decline politely, and you do your job. Sobriety is mandatory." She set her hand down. "These rules exist for your safety and the safety of this establishment. Follow them, and you'll find the Obsidian a lucrative place to work. Break them, and you'll find the door faster than you can apologize. Questions?" Silence. "Good. Now, let's talk about the clientele. Our clients are wealthy, powerful, and value their privacy above all else. You'll see politicians, business owners, people whose faces you might recognize from the news. You will treat them all identically with respect and discretion. What they discuss here, what they do here, who they meet here, none of it is your concern. You are furniture with pulse, functional, pleasant, forgettable." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. The way Talia described it made the job sound less like bartending and more like being a living prop in someone else's theater. For the next 4 hours, they practiced. Talia demonstrated how to mix 30 classic drinks, each with specific measurements and presentation styles required by the house. The other women whose names Clara learned were Harper, Vivienne, and Jade worked alongside her, their movements gradually synchronizing into a rhythm. Harper was the redhead, 23, from Atlanta. She'd been working at the Obsidian for 6 months and carried herself with the confidence of someone who understood the game. Vivienne was quiet, dark-haired, with a French accent and eyes that rarely met yours directly. Jade was the youngest, barely 21, bouncy and nervous and too eager to please. They didn't ask Clara where she came from, and she didn't ask about them. The non-asking felt like its own kind of rule, unspoken but understood. At midnight, Talia called for a break. The women gathered around a small table in the corner, drinking water from glass bottles that probably cost more than Clara's grocery budget. "So," Harper said, studying Clara with open curiosity, "you're Mira's friend." "I am," Clara said carefully. "Mira's been here longer than any of us. 3 years. Mr. Varga trusts her." Harper's tone made it clear this was significant information. "That means he'll probably trust you." "Lucky." "Why lucky?" Clara asked. Harper and Vivienne exchanged glances. Then Harper leaned in slightly. "Because the ones he trusts get protection. And in this business, protection matters more than the paycheck." "What business?" Clara asked before she could stop herself. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Talia appeared in the doorway, though Clara hadn't heard her approach. "Break's over," she said coolly, her eyes fixed on Clara. And Miss Monroe? Rule 1. Remember it. Clara's face burned. She nodded and returned to the practice bar, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for the shaker. She was beginning to understand that the Obsidian Lounge wasn't just a bar. It was something else entirely, and everyone here knew it except her. Clara's first real shift started on Thursday night at 6 p.m. sharp. She arrived 15 minutes early, changed into her uniform in the staff locker room black dress, black heels, hair pulled back in a low bun, and took her position behind the bar. The lounge was still empty, tables gleaming under soft light, the air heavy with the scent of leather and expensive cologne. Harper worked the other end of the bar. She caught Clara's eye and offered a small nod encouragement or warning. Clara couldn't tell. At 6:30, the first clients arrived. A couple in their 50s, dressed like they were attending the opera. Then a group of men in suits, laughing too loudly, their watches catching the light. Then more, a steady stream of beautiful people, with beautiful problems and money to drown them in liquor. Clara fell into the rhythm. Take orders, mix drinks, serve with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, collect generous tips. The clients barely looked at her, which was exactly how she wanted it. Invisible, forgettable, safe. At 9 p.m., the energy in the room shifted. Clara felt it before she saw him. The way conversations paused mid-sentence, the way people straightened in their seats, the way even the jazz seemed to lower in deference. Lucien Varga entered the main floor. He didn't announce himself, didn't need to. He simply appeared, moving through the space like he owned every molecule of air within it. He wore a different suit tonight, charcoal gray, with a black shirt underneath. No tie. The tattoo on his collarbone was more visible now. Clara could make out wings, maybe, or flames. 2 men flanked him. One was the size of a small car, with a face like a granite slab that had to be Ivan, the head of security Mira had mentioned. The other was younger, lean, with sharp features and eyes that never stopped moving, cataloging threats. They moved to a private booth in the corner, the one with the best view of both the entrance and the bar. Talia appeared at Clara's elbow. Table 12. Mr. Varga's usual. Don't make him wait. Clara's hands moved on autopilot, reaching for the bottle of Macallan 30-year, pouring exactly 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. No ice. She knew this somehow, though no one had told her. The same way she knew to place it on a small silver tray with a cloth napkin folded precisely. She walked across the floor, hyper-aware of her posture, her breathing, the sound of her heels on the polished concrete. When she reached table 12, she set the drink down without meeting Lucien's eyes. Your usual, Mr. Varga. Look at me, he said quietly. Clara froze. Then, slowly, she raised her gaze. He was watching her with that same intense focus from the interview, like she was a puzzle he was working to solve. How's your first night? Fine, sire. Nervous? A little. Good. Fear keeps you alert. He picked up the glass, swirled the amber liquid. Tell me something true, Miss Monroe. It was such a strange request that Clara answered without thinking. I'm terrified that I'm not good enough for this job, that I'll make a mistake and lose it. Lucien's expression softened barely, just a fraction, but enough that she noticed. We all make mistakes. The question is whether you learn from them or let them destroy you. Which kind of person are you? I'm still figuring that out, Clara admitted. Honesty again. He took a sip of the whiskey. I like that about you. But be careful, Miss Monroe. In my world, honesty can be as dangerous as lies. Choose your audience wisely. He dismissed her with a slight nod, and Clara returned to the bar, her pulse racing. For the rest of the night, she felt his eyes on her not constantly, but often enough that she couldn't relax. Every drink she poured, every client she served, she wondered if he was watching, evaluating, judging. At midnight, he ordered another drink. This time, when she brought it over, he gestured to the empty seat across from him. Ivan and the other guard had stepped away, giving them privacy. Sit, Lucien said. I'm working. I own the bar. Sit. Clara sat, perched on the edge of the leather booth, hands folded in her lap. Lucien pushed the whiskey toward her. One drink, one truth. A game I play sometimes. You drink, you tell me something real. I drink, I do the same. Fair? This felt like a test. Or a trap. Maybe both. But she took the glass and sipped just enough to taste fire and smoke and something that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She set it down. I'm afraid of quiet moments. because they usually mean something bad is about to happen. Lucien's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He took the glass back, drank, then met her eyes. I respect people who survive, but I don't trust them. Survivors know how to lie too well. Then why hire me? Clara asked. Because I recognize myself in you, and I'm curious to see if you'll rise or fall. He finished the whiskey and stood. Get back to work, Miss Monroe. And remember, honesty is a gift. Don't waste it on people who don't deserve it. He left the booth, Ivan and the other guard materializing at his sides, and disappeared up the spiral staircase to his office. Clara returned to the bar, her hands trembling slightly. Harper caught her eye and mouthed, "Asterisk. What the hell was that?" "Asterisk." Clara just shook her head. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it meant something. On Clara's third week at the Obsidian, a woman arrived who made even Lucien Varga straighten his posture. She entered at exactly 9 p.m., flanked by 2 guards Clara didn't recognize. She was perhaps 65, with steel-gray hair swept into an elegant chignon, wearing a deep burgundy suit that screamed old money. Her jewelry was minimal but exquisite, a single strand of pearls, diamond studs, a ring on her right hand that caught the light like captured starlight. The room didn't just shift when she entered, it bowed. Lucien appeared from his office within seconds, moving across the floor with a purpose Clara had never seen before. When he reached the woman, he kissed both her cheeks, the only time Clara had ever seen him touch anyone with genuine affection. They spoke in low tones, then moved to table 12. Talia appeared at the bar. "Mrs. Varga's usual. Don't screw this up." Mrs. Varga. His mother. Clara prepared 2 drinks the Macallan for Lucien, and for his mother, a martini with a specific ratio Talia had drilled into her. 6 parts vodka, 1 part vermouth, 3 olives, stirred precisely 40 times. She carried the tray across the floor, fighting the urge to check her reflection in every surface she passed. When she reached the table, she set the drinks down with careful precision. "Thank you, dear," Mrs. Varga said, and Clara nearly jumped. The woman's voice was warm, cultured, with the same trace of an accent as her son's. She looked up at Clara, and her eyes the same dark, penetrating eyes as Lucien studied her with unsettling intensity. "You're new," Mrs. Varga said. "Not a question." "Yes, ma'am. Clara Monroe." "Monroe. Irish?" "Scots-Irish, ma'am. Generations back." Mrs. Varga smiled slightly. "And how are you finding my son's establishment?" Clara hesitated. She could feel Lucien watching her, could feel the weight of this moment, though she didn't understand why it mattered. "It's unlike anywhere I've ever worked," she said carefully. "Because it's not really a bar, is it?" Mrs. Varga picked up her martini, took a delicate sip. "It's a confessional, a neutral ground, a place where deals are made and secrets are kept. My son has built something quite remarkable." "Mama," Lucien said quietly. "A warning." "Oh, hush, Luke. I'm just talking to the girl." She turned her attention back to Clara. "You have the eyes of someone who survived something terrible. I recognize that look. I wore it myself once, many years ago." Clara's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. Mrs. Varga set down her glass. "My son told me he did a background check on you. Found very little, just a gap in your history. He respects that. So do I. But I'm also a mother, and mothers worry. So I'll tell you this once. If you're running from something, you've chosen well. Lucien protects what's his. And if you work here, you're his to protect." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they made Clara's skin prickle. "Thank you, ma'am," she managed. As she turned to leave, Lucien spoke. "Miss Monroe." "Stay a moment." Clara froze. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the space beside his mother. This was definitely a trap, but Clara sat anyway, folding her hands in her lap, trying to keep her breathing steady. "I want you to understand something," Lucien said, his voice low enough that only the 3 of them could hear. "The background check I ran wasn't invasive curiosity. It was necessary. I need to know who enters my world and why. What I learned about you, about where you were before you came here, tells me you're running from someone." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't confirm or deny. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand this. No one touches my people. No one threatens them. No one hurts them. If someone from your past shows up, you tell me immediately. Not Talia, not security, me. Understood?" Clara wanted to feel violated. wanted to be angry that he'd invaded her privacy, that he knew things about her life she hadn't shared. But mostly she just felt tired, and strangely, impossibly, safe. "Understood," she whispered. Mrs. Varga reached over and patted Clara's hand, a brief, gentle touch. "Good girl. Now go back to work. We've terrified you enough for one evening." Clara fled back to the bar, her thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and something that felt dangerously close to trust. Harper was watching her. What the hell was that about? "I have no idea," Clara said honestly. But she did know one thing. Lucien Varga wasn't just a bar owner, and she was no longer just an employee. She was something else now. She just didn't know what. It happened on a Tuesday, Clara's first night off in 12 days. She'd worked 6 straight shifts, pulling in tips that made her want to cry with relief when she counted them in the staff room. Enough to pay rent for the next 3 months. Enough to buy real groceries instead of dollar store ramen. Enough to feel like maybe, just maybe, she was building something stable. She left the Obsidian at 3:30 a.m., later than usual because she'd helped Harper clean up after a bachelorette party that had gotten messy. The rain had returned lighter this time, more mist than storm, and the streets gleamed under streetlights. Clara walked toward the bus stop on Canal Street, her feet aching in her heels, her mind already planning tomorrow's first real day off. She'd sleep until noon, maybe go to the library, buy a coffee from somewhere that wasn't a gas station. She didn't notice the car following her until she turned onto a side street, a shortcut she'd been taking for weeks. The SUV was black, nondescript, windows tinted. It rolled past her slowly, then stopped 30 feet ahead. Clara's instincts screamed. She turned back the way she'd come, walking faster now, her heels clicking too loud on the pavement. The SUV reversed. She started running. Behind her, a car door slammed. Footsteps. Heavy, male, getting closer. "Clara, Clara, baby. Stop." The voice hit her like ice water. "Damien." She ran harder, but her heels betrayed her. She stumbled, caught herself against a brick wall, and then a hand grabbed her arm, spinning her around. He looked worse than she remembered. Thinner, with hollows under his eyes and a wildness in his expression that made her stomach drop. His grip on her arm was iron. "Where the fuck have you been?" he demanded. 3 months, Clara. 3 months of you ghosting me like I'm nobody, like what we had meant nothing." "Let go of me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You think you can just leave? Just run away?" His grip tightened, and she felt pain shoot up her arm. "You're mine. You've always been mine." "I'm not," Clara said. "I'm not yours. I left. It's over." His other hand came up, tangling in her hair, yanking her head back. "It's over when I say it's over. Not before." She tried to scream, but his hand clamped over her mouth. He dragged her toward the alley, and Clara's vision blurred with panic. She kicked, clawed, bit down on his palm hard enough to taste blood. He cursed and released her mouth for a second, just long enough for her to scream. "Help! Someone!" Damien's hand struck her face, and the world spun. She tasted copper. Then, suddenly, his weight was gone. Clara collapsed against the wall, gasping, and looked up to see Damien pinned against the opposite wall by a man built like a mountain. Ivan. Lucien's head of security held Damien by the throat with one massive hand, lifting him until his toes barely scraped the ground. His face was expressionless, not angry, just efficient, like he was dealing with trash that needed removing. And behind Ivan stood Lucien himself. He looked different in the mist, and shadows more dangerous, less polished. He wore dark jeans and a leather jacket over a black t-shirt. His hair was slightly disheveled. He carried himself like violence incarnate. He walked past Ivan, stopping directly in front of Damien. "Who are you?" Lucien asked quietly. "Fuck you," Damien choked out. Lucien glanced at Clara. Took in her torn dress, her bleeding lip, the mark already forming on her cheek. His jaw tightened. He turned back to Damien. "I'm going to ask you one question. Answer honestly, and you walk away with your life. Lie, and I let Ivan finish what he started. Understood?" Damien nodded frantically. "Do you know who she is to me?" Lucien asked. "I know, she's my—" "She was never yours," Lucien interrupted, his voice still deadly quiet. "And she will never be yours again. From this moment forward, if you come within 100 yards of Clara Monroe, if you contact her, if you so much as think her name too loudly, I will know. And when I know, I will find you. And when I find you, what Ivan is doing right now, will feel like a gentle handshake compared to what I'll do to you. Am I making myself clear? Yes, Damien gasped. Say it, Lucien ordered. I'll stay away. I swear. I'll stay away. Lucien studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded to Ivan. Ivan released him. Damien collapsed to the ground, coughing, then scrambled back toward his SUV like a kicked dog. The engine roared to life, and he was gone. Clara stood against the wall, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Lucien turned to her, and his expression shifted from predator to something softer concern, maybe. Are you hurt? He asked. I don't. Herr Niesbuckle. Lucien caught her before she hit the ground, one arm around her waist, the other supporting her head. He lifted her easily, cradling her against his chest. Ivan, bring the car, he said. Clara tried to protest, but her voice wouldn't work. She was too cold, too scared, too everything. A black Mercedes appeared at the mouth of the alley. Ivan opened the back door. Lucien slid into the back seat, still holding Clara. Levantine Tower, he told the driver. As the car pulled away, Clara finally found her voice. How did you know? I had someone watching you, Lucien said simply. From your first shift. I told you I protect what's mine. I'm not yours, Clara whispered, but there was no force behind it. No, Lucien agreed quietly, but you work for me, and that's close enough. Clara closed her eyes and let herself lean into his warmth. Just for a moment, just until the shaking stopped. Levantine Tower was the kind of building Clara had only seen in magazines, 42 stories of glass and steel on the edge of the arts district, each floor worth more than she'd earn in a lifetime. The elevator required a key card. Lucien swiped his, and they rose in silence, Clara still in his arms, though her legs probably worked again. She told herself she'd ask him to put her down. In a minute, when her brain started functioning properly again, they reached the top floor. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse that took Clara's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The Mississippi River snaked through the lights below like a dark ribbon. The space was enormous, an open-concept living area with minimalist furniture, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a restaurant, and hallways leading to what must be bedrooms. But it was also surprisingly warm. Books lined built-in shelves. Art covered the walls, real paintings, not prints. Plants thrived near the windows. This wasn't a showpiece. Someone actually lived here. Lucien finally set Clara down on a cream-colored sofa. Wait here. He disappeared down one of the hallways. Ivan stood by the elevator, arms crossed, watching her with an expression that might have been sympathy. Thank you, Clara said quietly. For earlier. Ivan nodded once. Boss's orders. We watch his people. All of his people? Just the ones he thinks are in danger. Ivan's tone made it clear that was a very short list. Lucien returned carrying a first aid kit and a glass of water. He set both on the coffee table and knelt in front of Clara, opening the kit with practiced efficiency. Let me see, he said. Clara turned her face toward the light. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the split in her lip, his touch so careful it barely stung. This should have been in the hospital, he said quietly. But I'm assuming you don't want official reports. You assume correctly, Clara whispered. He applied antiseptic, then covered it with a small butterfly bandage. His hand moved to her cheek, where Damien's strike had left a blooming bruise. He pressed an ice pack wrapped in a soft cloth against it. Hold that, he said. Clara took the ice pack, her hand brushing his. She expected him to pull away. Instead, his fingers lingered for just a moment. Warm, solid, real. The guest room is down the hall, he said, standing. Second door on the left. There are clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom. Take whatever you need. I can't stay here, Clara said automatically. You can, and you will. At least tonight. His tone left no room for argument. That man knows where you work. Maybe he knows where you live too. You're safer here until we confirm he's gotten the message. We? Clara asked. Lucien's smile was sharp. Ivan is very good at making sure messages are understood. She should have been horrified. Should have stood up and demanded to leave, to handle this herself, to not owe this man anything. But she was so tired. And the idea of going back to her apartment alone, of lying awake listening for footsteps, of living in fear again, she couldn't do it. Just tonight, she said. Just tonight, Lucien agreed, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it any more than she did. Clara made her way down the hallway, ice pack still pressed to her face. She found the second door, opened it, and stopped. The room was beautiful queen bed with white linens, more floor-to-ceiling windows, a small sitting area with a reading chair. But what made her freeze was the color scheme. Everything was in shades of soft green and gold, like a garden, like spring. "My sister's room," Lucien said quietly behind her. Clara jumped. She hadn't heard him follow. "She died 8 years ago. I keep it as she left it. I don't usually let anyone stay here, but it feels right tonight." "I'm sorry," Clara whispered, "about your sister." "So am I." He paused in the doorway. "Her name was Elena. She was 22 when she died. Same age you were when you first tried to leave him, I think." Clara turned sharply. "How did you—" "The concealer doesn't hide everything, Miss Monroe. I saw the old bruise under your eye in your interview, and tonight confirmed what I suspected." His voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. "Elena died because I wasn't there to protect her, because I didn't see the danger until it was too late. I won't make that mistake again." He started to leave, then paused. "The bathroom has a lock. Use it if it makes you feel safer, and my room is at the end of the hall. If you need anything, if you hear anything, come find me." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Clara stood in Elena Varga's room, surrounded by the ghost of a girl who died too young, and finally let herself cry. Clara woke to the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft, the sheets too expensive, the sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. Then memory crashed back. Damien, the alley, Lucien's arms, this penthouse. She sat up, wincing as her split lip pulled. The ice pack had fallen to the floor sometime in the night. Her dress from yesterday was draped over the chair. Someone, probably Lucien, had brought it in after she'd changed into the oversized t-shirt she'd found in the closet. She checked the time on her phone. 11:30 a.m. No messages, no missed calls. The world had continued without her, oblivious to how close she'd come to disaster. Clara splashed water on her face in the ensuite bathroom, trying not to look too closely at the bruise darkening her cheekbone. Then she ventured out into the penthouse. Lucien sat at the kitchen island, reading a newspaper, an actual physical newspaper with a cup of coffee at his elbow. He wore gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt that revealed more of his tattoos, not just the one on his collarbone, but others snaking down his left arm. He looked younger without the suits, more human. "Good morning," he said without looking up. "Coffee? Please." He gestured to a French press on the counter. Clara poured herself a cup, added cream from a small pitcher, and leaned against the counter, unsure of the etiquette for standing in a mafia boss's kitchen the morning after he saved your life. "How do you feel?" Lucien asked, finally looking at her. "Like I got hit by a truck," Clara admitted. "But alive. Thanks to you." "Thanks to Ivan," Lucien corrected. "I just provided the words. He provided the intimidation. Still, you didn't have to." She trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Didn't have to follow her? Didn't have to care? Didn't have to bring her here?" "I told you," Lucien said, setting down the paper. "I protect my people, and you're one of mine now, whether you like it or not." "I'm not anyone's," Clara said quietly. "Not anymore." "Good." He took a sip of coffee. "Then we're in agreement. You're not mine. You're yours. But while you work for me, I'll make sure no one tries to claim otherwise." Clara wrapped both hands around her mug, drawing comfort from the warmth. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. I may not answer." "Your sister, Elena. You said she died because you weren't there. Was it someone like Damien?" Lucien's jaw tightened. For a long moment he didn't speak, and Clara thought she'd overstepped. Then he stood, walking to the windows, staring out at the city below. "Her boyfriend," he said finally. "Charming at first, then controlling, then violent. By the time we realized what was happening, she was too afraid to leave. She thought she could manage it, that she could fix him. One night, she tried to end it. He didn't take it well." "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. "I was in Prague when it happened, building connections, expanding the business. My mother called at 3 a.m. By the time I got home, Elena was already in the ground." He turned to face her. "I swore that day I'd never let it happen again, that any woman under my protection would stay safe, no matter the cost." "Is that why you hired me?" Clara asked. "Because I reminded you of her?" "No. I hired you because you're good at your job, and Mira vouched for you. He walked back to the island, refilled his coffee. But when I saw that old bruise in your interview, I made a choice. To keep an eye on you. To be ready if the past caught up. And last night confirmed I was right to be cautious. He met her eyes. I don't regret what we did to him, Clara, and I won't apologize for it. In my world, there are only two kinds of justice. The kind you get in courtrooms, which rarely works, and the kind you get in dark alleys, which always does. Clara should have been scared. This man casually admitted to having people followed, to threatening violence, to operating outside the law. But all she felt was a strange, fierce gratitude. What did you do? She asked. After he drove away, what did Ivan do? Nothing permanent, Lucien said. Just a reminder. His car was towed to a secure location. He was interviewed about his intentions. Given a very clear understanding of consequences. By now, he's been released with his phone, his wallet, and a strong motivation to leave Louisiana entirely. That's it? That's it. Lucien's eyes were steady. I'm not a monster, Clara. I don't hurt people for fun. But I also don't tolerate threats to my people. Damien got off easy because he didn't actually succeed in harming you beyond a split lip. If he had, his voice went cold. Well, let's be grateful we don't have to discuss that scenario. Clara set down her coffee. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep showing up to work. Keep being good at your job. That's thanks enough. He paused. But there is one thing I want you to consider. What? Your apartment. The one with the broken lock and the landlord who doesn't fix anything. You can't go back there. Not safely. I don't have anywhere else, Clara said. You could stay here, Lucien said quietly. Not in Elena's room that was temporary. There's another guest suite, fully furnished. Private entrance if you want it. You'd pay rent, just like any other tenant. Nothing free, nothing owed. Just safe. Clara stared at him. You're offering me an apartment in your building? I'm offering you a place to live where I know no one will touch you. Where there's security on every floor, cameras in every hallway, and Ivan downstairs if you ever need him. He crossed his arms. But it's your choice. I won't force you. If you want to go back to your apartment, I'll have someone escort you and make sure it's secure. But this option exists if you want it. It was too much. Too fast. Too generous from a man who barely knew her. Why? Clara whispered. Why do you care? Because I failed Elena, Lucien said simply. And I won't fail again. Not on my watch. They stood in the bright morning light, two broken people circling the idea of trust like it was something fragile and rare. Can I think about it? Clara asked. Take all the time you need, Lucien said. But while you're thinking, you're staying here. At least until we're certain Damien is gone. Clara nodded slowly. Okay. One more night. Lucien smiled small, genuine. One more night. But they both knew it would be longer than that. 3 days later, Clara moved into the guest suite on the 38th floor. It wasn't the penthouse that remained Lucien's private space, but it was more beautiful than any place she'd ever lived. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and windows that made the city feel close enough to touch. Lucien had been true to his word. She paid rent, not much, but enough that it felt like an exchange rather than charity. I don't want to be owned, she'd told him the morning she agreed. Not by you. Not by anyone. Good, Lucien had replied, because I don't want to own you. I just want you to be safe enough to sleep at night. The first week was strange. Clara worked her shifts at the Obsidian, came home to an apartment that felt like a dream, and slowly began to breathe without constantly checking over her shoulder. Damien didn't reappear. His name stopped appearing in her nightmares. Lucien checked on her once a day, never intrusive, just a quick text, asterisk. Settling in, okay? Asterisk. Or times. Need anything? Asterisk. She always replied, asterisk fine, asterisk or times, no thank you, asterisk. On Friday of her second week, Lucien invited her to dinner. Not a date, he clarified quickly. Just 2 people who live in the same building sharing a meal. My mother taught me that neighbors should be friendly. Clara almost laughed. The idea of Lucien Varga as a neighbor felt absurd. But she agreed. They ate on his terrace, the one Clara hadn't seen during her first panicked visit. It was stunning, with potted trees and comfortable furniture and a view that stretched to the horizon. Lucien had cooked, actually cooked, not ordered takeout, a simple pasta with tomatoes and basil that tasted better than anything Clara had eaten in months. Where did you learn to cook? She asked. My grandmother, Lucien said. She insisted every Varga know how to feed themselves. Said that independence started in the kitchen. Smart woman. She was. Terrifying but smart. He refilled her wine glass just a little, never pushing. Tell me something, Clara. Now that you're settled, now that you're safe. What do you want? What do I want? Clara repeated, surprised by the question. Yes, not what you're running from, not what you're surviving, what you actually want, for yourself. Clara thought about it. For so long, her only goal had been escape, then safety, then a paycheck. She hadn't thought beyond that. I want, she said slowly, to wake up without being afraid. I want to make enough money to have choices. I want. She hesitated. I want to feel like my life belongs to me, not to what happened, but to what I choose next. Lucien nodded. Those are good wants. Achievable. What about you? Clara asked. What do you want? He considered this, swirling wine in his glass. Peace, I think. But not the kind you find, the kind you build, with boundaries and consequences and people who understand the rules. Your world, Clara said. My world. He met her eyes. Which you're now part of, whether you plan to be or not. I still don't fully understand what that world is, Clara admitted. Everyone at the bar acts like they know something I don't. They do, Lucien said. And eventually you will too. But for now, all you need to know is this. I run a business. Not all of it is legal. Some of it operates in gray areas. But I have rules, and I keep them. I don't deal drugs, I don't traffic people, and I don't hurt anyone who doesn't come after me first. And the Obsidian is exactly what it looks like, a bar, but also a meeting place. Neutral ground where people from different worlds can sit down and talk without violence. That's valuable. That's what I provide. Clara absorbed this. Should I be scared of you? Probably, Lucien said honestly. But I hope you won't be, because I'm only dangerous to people who cross me. And you, Clara Monroe, are not one of those people. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over New Orleans, two survivors finding something that looked almost like friendship. Thank you, Clara said quietly. For everything. For the apartment, for saving me. For not asking me to be anything other than what I am. You're welcome, Lucien said. But understand something. This isn't charity. You work hard at the bar. You're good with clients. You don't cause problems. That's worth protecting. I don't invest in people who waste my time. Clara smiled. So I'm a good investment? You're an excellent investment. He raised his glass. To agreements between equals. Clara raised hers. To independence in the kitchen and everywhere else. They clinked glasses as the city lights came on below them, and Clara realized something startling. For the first time in years, she felt something close to happiness. 2 months after the night in the alley, winter arrived in New Orleans not with snow, but with cold rain that turned the streets to mirrors. Clara stood at her apartment window, watching water stream down the glass, and thought about how much had changed. She'd bought new clothes with her earnings, nothing fancy, but things that fit properly and made her feel like herself. She'd enrolled in an online class, returning to the literature degree she'd abandoned. She'd learned to sleep through the night without waking in panic. And she'd learned to exist in Lucien's orbit without losing herself in it. They had dinner once a week, always casual, always friendly, never crossing into territory that felt dangerous. He checked on her but never hovered, protected her but never controlled her. It was the first healthy male presence in Clara's life in longer than she could remember. Sometimes she caught him watching her at the bar with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not possession, not desire, exactly. Something else. Recognition, maybe. The look of someone who saw their past self in another person and wanted better for them. On this particular rainy night, Clara wasn't working. She'd taken a rare weeknight off to finish an essay for her class. She sat on her couch with her laptop, tea cooling beside her, content in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mira. Asterisk, heard you moved to Levantine. Living large now, girl. Asterisk. Clara smiled and typed back. Asterisk, living safe. There's a difference. Asterisk. Asterisk, he's good people, asterisk, Mira responded. Asterisk, despite everything else, asterisk. Asterisk, I'm starting to see that, asterisk, Clara replied. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like it was trying to get inside. Clara set aside her laptop and walked to the glass, pressing her palm against the cool surface. From this height, New Orleans looked small, manageable. The streets she'd once run through in terror were just lines on a map now, places she could choose to go or avoid entirely. Her phone buzzed again. This time Lucien. Asterisk power might go out with this storm. You have candles? Asterisk. Asterisk. Yes. Asterisk, she typed. Asterisk. I'm prepared. Asterisk. Asterisk. Good. Let me know if you need anything. Asterisk. Clara smiled. Asterisk, I will. Thank you. Asterisk. She returned to her couch, to her essay about resilience in Southern Gothic literature, and let the rain be just rain. Not a threat, not a metaphor, just water falling from the sky. Somewhere in the building below, Lucien Varga stood in his own apartment, watching the same storm. Ivan had just reported back. Damien had moved to Texas, had a new job, had apparently learned his lesson. No further action required. She's free, Lucien said quietly, more to himself than to Ivan. Ivan, standing by the door, allowed himself a small smile. No, boss. She's just found a safer cage. Lucien turned from the window. This isn't a cage. Maybe not, Ivan agreed. But you're still the one deciding how high the walls go. Lucien considered this. He thought about Clara, about her determination to pay rent, to keep boundaries, to build her own life even while accepting his protection. He thought about the way she looked at him. With gratitude but not dependence. With trust but not surrender. She can leave any time she wants, Lucien said. The door's not locked. True, Ivan said. But will you let her go if she tries? It was the right question, the only question that mattered. Lucien looked back at the storm, at the city he ruled from shadows, at the empire built on protection and control, and very careful lines he refused to cross. Yes, he said finally, because that's the difference between me and the man I took her from. I don't keep people in cages. I build walls so they can be free inside them. Ivan nodded, satisfied. Then she's lucky. No, Lucien said. She's strong. There's a difference. As the rain fell harder, as the city settled into darkness, Clara Monroe and Lucien Varga existed in separate spaces connected by an understanding neither had put into words. She was free because he made her safe, and he was redeemed because she let him try. It wasn't love. Not yet. Maybe never. But it was something rarer. A chance at peace for two people who'd survived too much and learned to build walls that didn't feel like prisons. The storm passed. The city gleamed. And Clara Monroe slept through the night without once reaching for pepper spray or listening for footsteps. In the morning, she would wake to sunlight and coffee, and the quiet satisfaction of a life that finally, impossibly, belonged entirely to her.